The Falkland Islands is a multicultural place, boasting a wide range of nationalities and ethnicities from around the world. As a very small, close-knit community, it's perhaps not a place you think would encounter a lot of discrimination, but it's also somewhere with not a lot of discrimination protection in place. That is why an equalities working group has been set up.
We don't necessarily have the policies or the legislation in place that provide protection for equalities and protection against discrimination, and that's something I'm really keen to see happen. So in the last assembly we started looking at this, and an equalities working group was set up. At the moment that's a huge group because it's trying to establish, I guess, just the scale of things that we need to do and put some priority on those.
One of the key priorities of the Islands Plan is social equity, which covers a wide range of areas including race relations, sex discrimination, housing and employment rights. But currently there are glaring gaps in equalities law. For example, there is currently no law against racial discrimination in the Falkland Islands. A race relations ordinance was passed in 1994, but was never brought into effect.
So it was based upon the UK race relations legislation from the 1970s. Now that has obviously been extensively amended subsequently, and so I think it was probably fairly out of date at the time at which that ordinance was being passed in the mid-90s. And I imagine, I'm just speculating, I imagine at some point someone's really thought, oh, actually maybe we should review this before we put it into place, and that's just for one reason or another not happened until now. I think the things that get action are the things where there are the most pressing needs at times. Now, the fact that this area hasn't been given a great deal of attention might be because there aren't problems in practice in some of the areas. So in which case the legislation might be a sort of nice to have, but perhaps isn't necessary. Or it might be that we're not dealing with some of these issues, and I think that's part of the work is to really understand what the problems are, because the point of putting legislation in place is to try and improve things and protect people's rights.
Equality in the Falklands has been identified as an important issue, not just on the subject of discrimination, but also representation.
There are quite a lot of women in senior positions across government, so that's great, but again it's something you want to continue, and to make sure that people from different backgrounds and ethnicity coming into the assembly and into government positions, I think is really important, because again I'm the first person of Chilean descent. My mum's a Falkland Islander, my father is Chilean, to have ever served on the Assembly. And we have a large Chilean population, we have a large Saint population. So I think it's really important that we encourage people from all backgrounds.
This is likely to be a project that's phased over a significant period. So, obviously the elected members at some point will get a report and be asked to make a decision around this. Is the Falklands behind? It might be behind in terms of the legislation that we have in place, but I think the attitudes in society are probably reflective of attitudes elsewhere in the world. I think those things have moved on.
While it will take some time to fill the gaps in the law, and while the establishment of these laws is long overdue, now that the government are taking action, it certainly looks to be a step in the right direction.